I don't think the monk adds anything to the game that the other classes don't already do.
2 votes.
Every D&D character is a trained martial artist.
Yeah.
There is a sentence in D&D combat rules which say your character is proficient with their unarmed strike, and every character class is proficient with a certain number of weapons.
Right.
Hence, every character is already a martial artist.
Your wizard is a martial artist.
If you've done any martial arts or self-defense training, you will know that most people are not, in fact, proficient with their unarmed strikes.
Right.
That takes training.
There has been some culture war discussion I think probably since at least the 2024 edition of D&D was announced, about how woke it was or wasn't going to be. So,
yeah.
Wait, what did they do now? Did they say, that the parties should not just immediately kill each other and should work together or something?
They may have said things like that. So
Yeah.
I, as a certified expert in Wokeology, have stolen this book from Bob of the Old Ways when he wasn't looking. And I read through the player's handbook to find the wokeness.
The thing they're all mad about right now is the upcoming Monster Manual, which releases in a week and a half, I think. Apparently they have trans some of the monsters.
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess. These are all monsters that are shapeshifters, or wouldn't have mammalian sexes or genders anyways.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, male succubi and female incubi, what?
What?
Shapeshifters
No more
do what they want.
Dino-sphinxes? No more andro-sphinxes?
See, I want to wage some forced adversity against D&D for not adding every Republican to the Monster Manual.
Well, they're all in there. They're just called orcs.
Oh,
Damn!
Burn them down.
No, gremlins. They're gremlins.
I mean, I don't think I'm too out of pocket to point out that orcs, as they're depicted in D&D, draw heavily inspiration from Tolkien, who intended them as symbols of fascism. So
that is true.
Bob,
if you could do me a favor,
Hmm.
could you use the interwebs and pull up the book on that site I stole from you?
Okay, let's see here. Give me a second. Are you referring to the player's handbook?
I am.
All right.
That is the book I stole from you.
Is this true that real fans are mad about orcs not being in the Monster Manual?
I was about to answer that in chat. Yes, that is true, but they aren't, because
real fans.
Yeah, I mean, we don't acknowledge the phrase "real fans" around here, by the way.
Right. They are and they aren't. None of the humanoids that you can play as characters, like elf, halfling, gnome, etc., are in the Monster Manual as monsters. Instead, there are NPC stat blocks, like for merchant or noble or outlaw or something like that. And you can just add the humanoid game traits from the player's handbook to those stat blocks in the Monster Manual. So you can create an orc noble or an elf bandit or something like that. That's all. Anyway, you want me to screen share this?
Yeah, let's pull it up. So I should also give my D&D bona fides. I hate D&D.
Well, fuck you then. I'm not sharing this book. What have I done?
You did share it. I stole it. I tricked you.
You hate D&D?
I hate D&D.
You hate it the same way Star Wars fans hate Star Wars.
I do.
Yeah.
All Star Wars fans hate Star Wars. That's just ask a Star Wars fan. That's how the first thing they'll tell you is how much they hate Star Wars. They're a real fan. So if you could pop up on that chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Playing the game?
Yes, that one.
Here
so
we
I went through the first several chapters to find what is woke and also what is anti-woke. As someone who has literally no skin in this game. While I grew up playing D&D 2nd edition, I'm a big fan of the original Baldur's Gate games, and played D&D up through 4th edition. 5th edition is just not my game. I don't like it. I don't care to run it. I've tried it. It's not for me. And you know what? That's fine. If 5e is your game, I'm happy for you. Role playing is awesome, and there are games for everyone. There's a system for you.
I will say, I love D&D, and in my opinion, as someone who's been playing D&D since the original version of the game,
Right.
called the Moldvay edition, I think 5e is the best the game has ever been. It's the most user-friendly and the most new player-friendly version ever. Yeah. So what are we looking at for wokeness in this chapter?
So if you want to go to the rhythm of play,
Okay.
and if you scroll down a bit, I believe there is this fun little box here. Keep going. Alright. No, we've gone too far. Alright, it must be above that then. Above the rhythm of play. Or I've just completely misplaced it in my notes where it is.
What is the subject you're looking for? Maybe I can help you.
It is about interacting with players at the table when you're uncomfortable. It might be under social interaction. I thought it was towards the top.
Let's see. I know which part you're talking about.
Yes.
It may be in the introduction.
Oh, it might be. That would make sense.
Talking about establishing a safe space in session 0.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might actually be in the DM's guide, not the player's handbook.
I thought there was. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway.
Because I had read that when I wrote this, so.
Okay.
It took me a little while to get into your computer and steal that book from you.
Whoops. Go away. All right. Let's continue. I'll look for the section. I think
Sure.
everyone understands what you're talking about.
So there are the wokeness of the book is that one of the sort of social contracts of the game is that not to be dicks to other players.
Yeah.
Even if it makes sense for your character might be that kind of dick, to maybe just not do that. And if you're a player and something is making you uncomfortable, to do something, raise a hand, speak up, to be like, hey, can we pause on this? And this is woke, according to the anti-woke people. But I have news for the anti-woke people. That's like in every role-playing game I've ever read.
Yeah.
Like, and if it's not explicitly called out, it's house rule number 1. And this was just like, and it's common sense stuff, right? If your character, to go with the worst stereotype in D&D, you're playing a bard, your character's gonna go get laid. The rest of the party is like, cool, I'll fade to black, no one cares. Because
Yeah.
no one cares about your ERP. If you and the GM want to do that on your free time, that's a perfectly viable free time thing for you to do, but no one at the table has to experience that if they don't want to.
Yeah. And the section, which for some reason I can't find, I don't know why it's not here.
Maybe they edited it out because they heard I was coming.
Yes, perhaps the conspiracy is getting deeper. But
Yeah.
one of the things it recommends is having hand gestures, right? Agreed upon hand gestures like creating an X over your chest or something like that. One thing I do as a DM in session 0 is I hand out like a brief questionnaire that can be anonymous, where people can write down things that, like, what are their red lines that they absolutely do not want to see.
Right.
Like it could be like eyeball stuff or essay or
Right.
romance or whatever. And then there's things that they're fine with as long as it fades to black, which I call offstage.
Personally, I really enjoy doing eyeball stuff. That's just me. I wanted to respond to Paul here and say that, yeah, man, we're talking
That
about
really is.
it's generally the same people that like a couple weeks ago were saying empathy is a sin. So
Right. This is that same
Yeah.
crowd. Also woke is that in the skills section, you can just like describe what you're doing. If you're doing a social interaction, you don't even have to act it out and talk in a funny accent. You can just roll your fucking dice.
Yeah.
This really upsets some people, especially in like the OSR community, which is the old school Renaissance games. They are retro clones of AD&D, but with 5e add-ons, quality of life stuff. Really the worst of both worlds, in my opinion. And the OSR crowd hates 5e in part because there are things like social skills, and there is the cultural implication that maybe you don't stab your buddies in the back. If you want to stab your buddies in the back, I can recommend you role-playing games. Paranoia, Hackmaster, Call of Cthulhu. spycraft.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into chapter 2, which I believe is your ancestries and backgrounds.
Ooh, I think that's
Or I'm sorry, species and backgrounds. Ancestry is something they're called in better games.
right. Create your character.
Yes.
So we got choose a class, determine origin.
Yes.
Here we
so
go. Backgrounds.
I did chapter. So the character classes, even though that's the first thing you do,
yeah.
Is choose a class. The actual characters are broken down in another chapter. So we're going to come back to classes, and we're going to go to your origin.
Okay.
And there's some woke stuff here. There's some woke stuff here. But there's also a lot of anti-woke stuff here. So if you're anti-woke and you're like, Morgan, professor of Wokeology, what do you mean there's some anti-woke stuff?
Well, where do we go?
So, classes are about
Choose
combat.
a class.
So if you're looking
What?
to choose a class, right? It's got a chart in there.
Mm-hmm.
The class overview chart. If you want to pop that up, it says what they like. It's almost all violence. Like, that's the defining feature of your character in D&D, according to this handy chart, is that if you're a paladin, you like defense. Why does a paladin like defense? I don't fucking know.
Sorry, I had to step away.
Barbarians like battle, and monks like unarmed combat. Because when I think of monk, I think of just punching people in the face like I'm in a bar brawl.
As if unarmed combat is not also battle.
Is not also battle, and as though fighters like weapons, but just weapons? Like, does a fighter not like martial discipline?
That's battle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
so,
we got bards who like performing, which doesn't have to be violent.
No, that's like
Clerics
like
gods.
gods. And this is woke though. So cleric is woke because clerics like gods. That's pluralism. That's pluralism.
Oh,
They don't
I
like
see.
just the one singular god. So now we found our first wokeness has made its way into D&D with the cleric. They're corrupting
Oh.
religion.
Oh. What about the druid here?
That's
They like
extra
nature.
woke.
Oh.
Druid is extra woke because they like nature and fucking can't be environmentalists. That's Antifa or something.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Look at the warlock likes occult lore.
Well, that really depends on what flavor of Nazi you are as to your opinion on occult lore. So check your
Yeah.
local, Nazi leader office for more details on.
Well,
what-
as the resident not D&D player, I'd like to ask a couple questions on behalf of the audience here. So, like,
Sure.
do these new rules make it impossible to simply play the game how you want to?
No.
No, you can always play the game how you want to.
Okay, so this doesn't actually enforce anything. On
Oh
you.
no, you can do whatever the fuck you want, unless you're playing in some sort of like game. If you want to run your game your way, you can fucking do that.
Yep.
Crazy.
In
Great.
fact, every GM in the history of ever has done that. If you are a GM, you have run your game your way. No one else runs your game the way you do.
And I also want to point out that if there is a chud saying this, I don't know if it's true or not. However, even if it is true, so
Yeah, so I have actually asked people because I've seen that, and I'll just maybe listen to TMI. I am uncomfortable with BDSM stuff. I just am. That's the way I am.
it's
I don't
understandable.
care that people do it. It's just not my thing, and it makes me awkward.
You don't want to be part of
Yeah.
it. That's fine.
I don't want
Let
to
me
it.
clear this up. When they say that we're incorporating BDSM stuff into the game, what he's talking about is having discussions and setting up boundaries and rules about consent.
Right.
The main thing with BDSM, the thing that's actually very good and anybody should take from BDSM, the BDSM community, is
Yeah.
the concept of consent.
Consent,
Explicit,
right.
enthusiastic
Right.
consent.
So this
Yeah,
is what I like. I say that because I am someone who, if I weren't a skeptical person, would be vulnerable to that. They're smuggling BDSM into D&D, especially because like I know people who get very into character and very raunchy and stuff, and it does make me uncomfortable. So I'm emotionally vulnerable to this argument, and I go, what does that mean? And they can't really get into the details.
Yeah. It's a moral panic. It's what
Right.
they're doing. They're trying to make you think that D&D is teaching kids about kink,
Right.
and that's not
Right.
what it's doing. It's incorporating broadly applicable practices from the BDSM community that every other community could benefit from if they use those guidelines. Like if you are in just the normal vanilla dating community,
Right.
and you incorporate discussions about consent and boundaries the way that the BDSM community does, guess what? You will never accidentally SA someone.
Right.
True. So essentially, what we're talking about here is there's more of the same. Just like moral panic over. We should do a moral panic. Episode, or rather, a FAP of BDSM if you would feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
If not.
Yeah,
But I mean,
very cool.
essentially, what it boils down to is this.
Forced adversity.
It's a good jingle. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So they're not. D&D is not teaching kids about kink.
No.
It is teaching players how to establish a non-toxic, constructive relationship with each other before they enter into it, so that everyone understands the expectations and doesn't go or does go out of their way not to hurt anyone else emotionally or, God forbid, physically, who is involved in the game.
When I started, there was an acronym for this in role-playing games. It was DBAD. Don't be a dick.
Yeah. It's just that, but with more detail
Paperwork.
and more granularity.
Right.
Thank you for answering.
Anyway,
Thank you for the question. That was a really good
what we're
question.
talking about.
So, so they have the anti-woke, like everything is about fighting. You are supposed to fight things. But now they've snuck in some woke things in here.
okay. Yeah.
But now if we go to your backgrounds.
Okay.
Okay, so this doesn't. Oh, so chapter 4 has the backgrounds. Okay.
Yeah, this is just the procedure from building your character.
Does the
you wanna
choose
see
languages list language? Because I have something there about language.
Okay, do you want to see the actual chapter?
No, if
On
in
backgrounds?
that choose a background towards the bottom, it says choose a language. Choose languages.
Boom.
Boom. Scroll down a little bit. Somewhere in so two things in here. One, that there's the first two. They're perfect. So one common is the language of humans, apparently, and it comes from space. That
Yep.
humans have one language is a little anti-woke to me, that like all real humans speak the human language that was granted from space by the Lady of Pain, apparently. I don't know. However, the wokeness comes in sign language, because sign language is woke. Never mind that when I was a teenager playing Hackmaster, we would all spend the build points to take sign language, because occasionally it's really handy to be able to communicate without verbalizing.
Yeah.
That's just
And
like
there have been, in the real world, in real history, there have been human societies where the common trade language between communities who did not have a shared spoken language was a sign language.
Yes.
The most famous one, or because it's the most recent one documented, was the Plains Indian.
Mhm.
That's what it was called, the Plains Indian Sign Language, and used by Native Americans across North America.
Right.
It was developed by the Plains tribes, but it spread through the entire continent. It was a common language that was a sign language, and it could be one-handed or two-handed.
Right. But this is one of those complaints that, like, why is there sign language? Because sign languages existed forever, and they have broad applications. And also, if you're a fucking nerd who's like, boy, it would be really cool to be able to talk without talking.
Yep.
Like, the anti-wokeness complaints about this are really just anti-creativity, because sign languages are cool. Like, in addition to the benefits they have for people who can't hear or can't speak, they're a marvel of human ingenuity that we can use our bodies to communicate that way. And we should celebrate that, not be
Yes.
afraid of it.
I wanted to say that, like, if they have a problem with sign language, because I guess maybe the argument that they might make is that it's it's real world sign language, so it breaks immersion or something. So you're just saying you should just create a whole new sign language, but then they probably have a problem with that too, right?
Yeah.
No.
But the thing is, at the table, as a player, you don't have to perform the hand gestures. You
Right.
can just say, I sign X, or you can just
Oh.
roll dice
I realize that.
if you want.
Not really. I mean, yeah, and it's like, even if you say, if anyone is trying to use sign language and actually perform the signs, and someone has a problem with that, it's like, dude, you are speaking English right now. Shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up. You don't speak Elven. Yeah, shut up, nerd.
Yeah.
So above that, we have choose a species. So D&D, famously, they were races forever, and lots of fantasy games have called them races. You now choose a species. And the anti-woke crowd complains about this a lot. Unfortunately for them, changing to species, not woke, not even novel. We all understand intrinsically that gnomes and goblins do not belong to the same human species that we belong to, or that
Mhm.
fantasy humans do. They're a different species,
Yeah.
and games have been calling them species for decades. So I award them no points and may Kellenvor have mercy on their souls.
Is there anything woke within, like as a subcategory within species though? Any
Do you wanna
changes
do we want to go down to talk species?
Well, I mean, yeah,
I don't
because I mean, I do have these comments from that person that I kicked out because he was clearly a fucking dipshit. But I, you know, if you guys want to address those 4 comments he made, we can do that too in this bit.
Okay, I can't see them, so somebody read them out loud.
Yeah,
I can pull them up for you.
Alright, sure, let's
Oh,
pull
you can't
those.
see them. Gotcha.
We can address the peanut gallery.
So, and I know Bob's gonna have some stuff to say about this. So,
Yeah.
um,
Then I can drink some coffee while Bob rants at this guy.
Tolkien hated symbolism and allegory was the first thing he said. Is that true, Bob?
No, it's not true. And yeah, it is not true. The quote about that gets abused that Tolkien said that he dislikes allegory is widely abused. He wasn't saying there is no allegory in my writing. He was just saying he thinks it's an overused trope. All fiction writing contains allegories. It is inescapable. You cannot write fiction without having allegories because they come from the human mind. And part of being human is you think symbolically. So there isn't a writer alive who has ever written a piece of fiction that does not contain allegories. And secondly, if you look up Tolkien's notes and letters, you will very quickly find that what he was doing with the orcs was symbolizing the hordes of people who he was drawing on his experiences from World War I, where the Germans, while not yet Nazis, were pretty cruel.
Right.
In
There were
their
a culture that was based on some cruelty and violence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was drawing from the way that the central powers behaved in his mind as a troop, and the Entente powers, who were, quote, the good guys, Britain, the US, France, the way they depicted and dehumanized the other side, the Germans, and so forth, was what inspired Tolkien's treatment of orcs. That's how he wrote them in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And then later on, after he published those works, he started having second thoughts about the way he had written orcs.
Well, so
And
that actually
there's-
addresses the second comment that he made immediately after that, which was the Orca, I think you meant orc, are not, capital letters, are not an allegory for fascism.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Sorry.
Then he went on to say,
Let me say this. Even if Tolkien thinks that they were not, they still were, because he was writing The Lord of the Rings and publishing it while World War II was happening, and his own son was facing the Nazi menace. That inevitably influenced what Tolkien was writing. There's
Well,
no
and-
way it couldn't have.
here's where this guy started to give himself away. This
Oh, yeah.
last- So he said, the orcs are just straight up supposed to be evil. Well, wait a
Nope.
second.
Tolkien disagrees.
And then the final one, which really gives him away. And you just blindly equate all fascistic ideas as evil.
There we go.
That's what got him the. That's
And
what
that's
got him the fucking GI robot.
Whoopsie!
Yeah, he got the PI robot drop and the banhammer.
So,
You're right. I do associate all fascist ideas with evil because they
true.
are.
I don't believe
Yeah.
in. I don't believe in like spiritually evil entities or anything like that. I don't believe evil is like an alignment. I think that evil. We've talked about this before. Whenever we talk about like libs of TikTok, evil is an effect to me. Like it's doing something that has a specific effect, and then knowing that it has that effect and harms, and even takes pleasure in that harm, and then continues to do that.
Yep. And
Because
that
people
is
can do
Tolkien's-
shitty things that harm people, and then ideally, and most people I like to think will learn from, oh fuck, I don't feel good about the fact that I hurt that person, right? And you can fucking
Yeah.
learn and become better than that. But fascism, evil, to me, fascism creates an evil effect by continuing and like intentionally, like that's the whole purpose of it, is to harm. So
Right, and Tolkien agrees. Tolkien explicitly stated that evil was a choice. Nothing was evil in the beginning, and the whole moral philosophy of the Lord of the Rings is rooted in Catholic theology, which holds that evil is not a metaphysical property. It is the absence of goodness.
Yep.
It is the choice to not do the right thing.
Boom. Choice.
So, yeah, D&D, when Gary Gygax came along and imposed the idea of inherent alignments on races of people, that's from Gary Gygax. That is not from Tolkien.
Look,
All right,
Jennifer.
so character origins covers background and species.
Here we go. Character species.
And now in prior versions of D&D, if you want to scroll through and just show some examples. There's the backgrounds.
There's a lot of really cool art.
There's a lot of cool
Yeah, there
art,
is.
yeah. So we have all these species, and the art is very pretty. So you want to just keep scrolling. I want to get to the crunch. Okay, so in prior versions of these traits blocks, one of the first things, usually somewhere beneath creature type, but before your fun stuff, would be ability score adjustments. Give me +2 this, +1 that, -X this, yada yada yada. That's all gone now. So it's woke because there's no more biological essentialism in D&D, sort of. Like we could talk about like how much that really mattered, especially once we get to the era where we move away from rolling for stats and moving into point buy or a default array. So back when Bob and I were young, to get your attributes, you would have to roll dice, and gods go with you, because your dice sure as hell weren't.
Yeah. So to that, let me add some clarity, a little bit of clarification for the benefit of people who might not understand Dungeons and Dragons here.
Yes.
When Morgan says attributes, what that means is that every character in D&D has certain what are called ability scores, like strength, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, etc., that are given a numerical score in the game. And in previous editions of the game, those traits were influenced by your race.
Yes.
Or species in the current context. So if you were an orc, that would lower your intelligence score no matter how high you rolled, because orcs are inherently stupid, or for instance. Or if you were, I don't know, an elf, you would get a boost to charisma or intelligence because they're inherently smarter and more beautiful than everyone else. And that adjustment to your character's ability scores has been removed from species/race in previous editions and moved to another component of your character that is not based on your biology.
It's based on your background.
Yeah.
So, backgrounds.
Oh, we're going to go to backgrounds? Okay.
Go backgrounds. Go back up to backgrounds.
Here we
But I
go.
wanted to touch on there's no more biological essentialism, because that's super woke. All the backgrounds are socialist. All these backgrounds are socialist. You know why?
Why?
You all get the same amount of money.
Oh, damn.
It doesn't matter if you're a noble or a guard or, a peasant. You have the same rough amount of money across the board.
So let's check that. Let's double check that. Let's fact check Professor Morgan here. All right.
Uh-oh.
The acolyte can choose A or B. A, get all this equipment, or B, 50 gold pieces. The next background, artisan, equipment, you can choose A or B. You can get all these tools, or look at that,
50 gold.
50 gold, right there.
Yeah, big 5-0.
The charlatan, oh look at that, 50 gold. Uh-oh, you're right, socialism.
Yep.
Surely the merchant or the noble will get more money. Oh no.
Oh
the
no,
merchant will get
50 gold.
And for any
Noble.
fucking morons that somehow think that equity means giving everyone equal equal outcome, this literally shows that's not true, because you're getting equal starting point. But what the outcome is totally how you play the game.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yes.
super socialism here in D&D land. You all get, your background gives you the same amount of money. Also, I want to talk about guards. Top of the guards. Show me the guard. Guards, cops. AGAB. All
AGAB,
guards are
I just say
bastards. I would like to, if you take the choice A, where you get a spear and a crossbow and some bolts and a gaming set. If I am an anti-woke person, that guard doesn't have time to be playing games on the job. They're not proficient in games. They should be proficient in law enforcement. or
Yeah.
patrolling or something, not games.
So, anti-woke because the guards are all cops and AGAB, but also woke because all guards are lazy.
All guards are lazy.
AGAL.
Also, for the what the fuck, this is just like, what does that have to do with being a guard? Like, from both
Well-
an anti-woke and a woke standpoint, what the fuck is going on here?
Well, it's playing into the trope, right?
Right.
Guards are. I mean, it says in the description, you remember your feet ache when you remember countless hours spent at your post at the tower. You're just bored,
Right.
right? So you develop card games and dice games and stuff.
But funnily enough, go down to soldier. Soldiers don't have a tool proficiency with a shovel. They have also gaming equipment. And if you know, from both an anti-woke and a woke standpoint, this is weird. Because if I am an anti-woke, like D&D must be historical, and I've read Caesar's war journals, like, no, soldiers marched up the hill, and they broke out their tools, began to build fortifications, and set up palisades, and yada, 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 yada. They don't have time to game. They are disciplined legionaries. And if I'm a anti-woke person, I'm like, again, like, they have a tool proficiency? Like, these are conscripts. They don't have anything.
And everyone noticed here that the ability scores are listed under your background now, as we mentioned before, not your species. So your ability score adjustments are a function of your training and life experience, not your birth. That's what's woke, I guess. I guess that's woke now.
It's woke that your ability scores are based on what you've done with your life. Yeah, it turns out.
Yeah.
The criminal background is definitely anti-woke, because apparently in D&D all criminals are dark, live in the dark, they live in alleys, they cut purses. There's no white collar crime in D&D. So that's very anti-woke.
I see.
Also, nobles don't even have a hierarchy. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? Like, nobles are just all nobles? Like, there's just like one tier of noble.
Right. Like there's no baron versus viscount versus prince.
Right.
Yeah.
No margraves
woke.
here. Yeah, that's
Wow,
that's
this is
historical
even.
revisionism.
I appreciate your insights and your scintillating analysis here, because I'm finding this is even woker than I thought it was. I've read this too. Like,
After
it didn't even
before I
occur to me to notice that everyone gets the same amount of money.
That's why Morgan's a woke spotter.
That's why I'm a wokeologist. Yes.
So any other woke notes we have here?
Let's see. If you want to, we can go to species now. I have a few notes. So in the game is anti-woke category, all the species have like a thing going on that, like, you want to pop up gnomes for me, for example. Let's pop up that gnome page. Apparently this is all gnomes. Like all gnomes are inventors, right? They're all building stuff and doing tinkering and yada yada yada. And go down to tieflings for me while we're at it. And they're all shady people at a fucking party, playing. They're.
I don't know. That looks
gamblers.
like they're the cool kids having a good time.
Right. But like they're all these well-dressed aristocrats with a fancy bottle of wine and the fancy cups.
They got a butler.
They got a butler who's also a tiefling. So like there is this like weird like members of the same species all do the same thing going on here.
Yeah.
For several of these.
I mean,
like,
maybe it's just we're just looking at one setting. So I mean, in one setting, the people in that setting will be doing the same thing, and often in many cases.
Sure, but if that's the go up to the Azamar, because the Azamar's a little different. Because you see, they're all doing different things. They're back there doing something different. The ones got
because the setting seems to be they're actually working on their society, whereas the others are like there's a
just
no project working on that robot, or they're playing their card games and drinking. I don't know. I'm just saying. I just these different settings. So.
You can play Tiefling's Advocate. I see how it is.
Oh, but we got to check out the art for the orcs, guys.
We have to
We
check
have
out the
to.
orc. Yeah.
I love the
this
art
one
for
got
all
them
these.
all of their panties in a bundle.
Before I make the reveal, yeah, this is the art that broke the Chud brains on the internet.
Yes.
Boom. Mexican orcs.
Mexican orcs.
That's what they said. They said these orcs are Mexican. I guess because of this guy's hat right here. I don't know.
He has a hat.
Is it because there's a desert? It kind of looks like deserty. It's like, there's some cactus, I guess. And Mexico's the only place in the world that has deserts.
Like there definitely is some like southwestern United
Sure.
States, northern Mexico vibes to some of the dress and the terrain.
There's like
Yeah.
3 or I mean, I would write off the terrain because I was being completely sarcastic. I mean, I don't think terrain alone does it, but there are like 2 or 3 or 4 clothing elements that kind of suggest that maybe. But
Sure.
yeah, overall, I don't see. I mean, you would think the Chuds would like that anyway, because
They want to
they're
kill
always
orcs
like,
anyway.
oh, Mexican caravans that the orcs are invading, right? Like that, you would think they would want them to be identified as the Mexicans or whatever, right?
They're just afraid the orcs are going to take their jobs as adventurers
Yeah.
now that they're in the serious spot.
They're afraid of how fucking jacked the orcs are. Look at those fucking guys. Like,
Right. To Morgan's point, unironically, I think that's because this is the first time orc has been a playable character option officially in the official rules. Before this, it was half orc, which is half orc, half human.
right.
So all these orc characters are now coming in and taking over the adventuring spots of the people who had some pure human blood in them.
I mean, half orcs. When I think about it, it really is kind of like the fact that you could only play as a half orc before. There is some weird shit there. Some
Yeah.
implications of that, like to say like, oh, it's kind of the same way that like look, we all know Obama only got to be president because he was half black, right? Like, if he was full on just a dark black dude, I doubt that the Chuds that now vote for Trump that voted for him back then for Obama, they wouldn't have voted for him. It would have made him uncomfortable. Anyway, I'm
And
just saying.
for those who don't know, related to half orcs, so there were half elves and half orcs before. And half elves were usually conceived consensually, and half orcs were usually not. They were
Right.
often depicted as the children of sexual violence.
Yeah, that's also. I didn't think about that. I didn't think that I just assumed it was all consensual. But of course, if it's orcs, I imagine much of it was not consensual. At least the way had been depicted previously as basically being evil.
Right. Now,
Right.
by the late 20th century, you even had them begin to move away from that with like you had a half-orc populations where, yes, at some point they were conceived somehow, but it was generations of half-orcs living with and among other half-orcs.
Yeah.
Or you had, in some settings, integrated societies where like, yes, there were just orcs around.
This stands out to me too because from the little bit I do remember, I used to read those Drizzt books.
Yeah.
Read a couple of those. They're like dark dwelling creatures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's up here?
They're not.
Yeah, that's another thing that the game, this version of the game, has removed the restrictions on operating in darkness versus light for some character species, like the Drow elves. No longer, like the Drow
have
and
light
orcs
blindness.
were received penalties to some of their ability checks when operating in daylight, and that restriction has been removed now.
Wow.
So any character can go into any light or dark setting, and they'll have the same.
Right. Can I
benefits or
just say, as
disadvantages.
someone who has, from the time I was young to the present day, not understood why dwarves also exist in that environment and never had those issues?
Mm-hmm.
Like dwarves.
Because the Drow
Well, I
are
mean,
black.
I
That's
thought
why.
it was like
Well, yeah,
dwarves
yeah.
prefer the dark, whereas like orcs were like relegated to it.
Do you know the Drow are like actually inspired, possibly subconsciously by Mormon mythology?
Oh my god.
What?
Okay, so in the original Drow lore, back in that Lair of the Spider Queen or whatever, Drow were elves who were taken and corrupted and darkened by Lolth, the spider
Yeah.
god, right?
Yeah.
In Mormon mythology, black people were white people who sinned too much
Right.
and became
Oh,
dark
God.
skinned.
Oh.
Fuck Christ. I knew that. I just didn't put it together. By the way, you're up, Morgan. Here you go.
All right. If you want to play a Knoll, play Pathfinder. Get good. Get on
There
my
you go.
level. They are
You can play
not,
Knolls You can play gnolls in D&D as well.
Yeah,
It's just not part of the core rules. You
Right.
can get there's a supplement that allows you to do that.
And also, gnolls are only fiend in 5e and like the first version of 5e. Before that, they were like they worshipped some nasty deities, but they weren't specifically fiends. They were another type of humanoids.
Yeah.
Gnolls in Mystara, which is a pretty old D&D setting, were an uncommon species that was just present in the setting as a normal people.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
like
Oh
basically-
god, it is called the Curse of Ham. Jesus.
So, before we wrap up, we should touch on some classes.
Okay.
So,
But-
do you want me to cover the anti-woke points of classes or the woke points of classes first?
Look at that Gandalf looking motherfucker.
Let's go in alphabetical order and do anti-woke first.
Okay, so barbarians.
Barbarians. Boom.
So, there is
Sexy barbarians.
Yeah, sexy. Oh, before I finish on species, just want to say Goliaths are core now, and that's super neat. I love Goliaths. Legit awesome. Just good job, Watsy. Little tip of the hat from me. While I don't particularly take the issue with the term, there are some people who take issue with barbarian as a class because they find it to be culturally insensitive.
To whom?
To people who are sensitive to being called barbarians.
To non-Romans.
To non-Romans, yes. Including
Yeah.
those damn Italians who are not Roman.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Conan? What is it, like? Is he getting upset about it? What's going on?
Well, the
Well,
word
no,
barbarian comes from what the Roman Empire referred to people who were not Rome, had not yet been conquered by Rome.
right.
Visigoth.
Yeah,
Among
this is
others.
barbarians. A
Well,
barbarian was an uncivilized person in the Roman perspective.
Right. So there are people who you could ostensibly like stereotype as woke, who take issue with barbarian as a character class in role-playing games. I personally don't see the issue, but people see an issue, and so if I was someone who were a anti-woke YouTuber, I could nitpick that and go, oh, the Watsy's still with us because they still have barbarians. Also, monks are Asian-themed martial artists, and this is not a unique problem to D&D at this point.
Mhm.
This would be like making all paladins have outrageous French accents.
I gotta say, this class, as long as I play D&D, this is the class I dislike the most,
Yeah,
because I'm of the opinion, and maybe this is a hot take, but I don't think the monk adds anything to the game that the other classes don't already do.
2 votes.
And
So, like, basically a cleric and a druid kind of already covers a lot of that, or what?
So yeah, monk in terms of like what we think of in Western storytelling, if you want to describe that as a whole thing, is typically what you would describe as a cleric who lives in a monastery and is a scribe,
right.
or a scholar of some variety, not a martial artist. So yeah, I think all of the stereotypes we assign to the monk as both the monastery dwelling ascetic or as the martial artist just go into other classes. Like
Sure.
you
Right.
could have an unarmed fighter be your monk.
Right, and I want to point this out here. This has always, as the pedantic martial artist in the group, this has always bothered me.
Yeah.
Every D&D character is a trained martial artist.
Yeah.
There is a sentence in D&D combat rules which say your character is proficient with their unarmed strike, and every character class is proficient with a certain number of weapons.
Right.
Hence, every character is already a martial artist.
You're a wizard as a
Yeah.
martial artist.
If you've done any martial arts or self-defense training, you will know that most people are not, in fact, proficient with their unarmed strikes.
Right.
That takes training. So this is why I don't like the monk class as a concept, because it's fine to have a character that specializes in unarmed combat, but a fighter could do that. And this is an Asian, specifically a Chinese coded class, which is, I know there are some Asian American gamers who were consulted about this update to the rules, which is why they call the monks pool of power focus points now, where they used to call it chi,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But this is like this class originates in the first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when they released a book called Oriental Adventures, and and it created a whole bunch of classes that were coded as Japanese, like the samurai and the ninja and stuff,
which we just call fighter.
Right. Yeah, and then created a bunch of. So if your campaign was based on a Chinese culture, it would still have characters who were called samurai.
Right.
So the people who put that book together did not do their homework or any consulting or anything like that. But this character class has stuck around since then in every iteration of the game because it's super popular. But I've always felt it was out of place because until very recently, D&D defaulted to a medieval European aesthetic where monks were fat, bald guys who hung out in monasteries and transcribed scrolls. They weren't wandering. Yeah. Now, I would totally love to play in a role-playing game that's based on like wuxia, or some I forget what the Japanese chambara, which is the Japanese movie genre about martial artists. That would be cool, but I think
that guy looks cool. I don't know.
And it looks cool, but I think it's weird to me that D&D keeps trying to. This class is the one that gets them in the most trouble or gets the most controversy for them when they're doing their game.
And they insist on
every single time.
And they seem to have an issue figuring out what the hell they want to do with it too. It's not just that it's this weird series of inherited stereotypes. It's that they do these weird things to make it different from the other martial characters, the other fighting type characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we literally refer to the non-spellcasting characters as martial characters, but they're the only class that has martial arts. Make it make sense. That like they're unarmored. Why?
Right. See, if you go over here to the fighter, there's a fighter subclass called the Battle Master, right?
Right. And they have maneuvers.
They have maneuvers, and these maneuvers are not specific to any weapon, so you can apply almost all of them to an unarmed strike. So, why do we need the monk? The fighter, all of the other martial classes are better at combat than the monk is, and all of the other magical classes are better at magic than the monk is. Mm-hmm. Why do we keep the monk? I don't get it.
Why is the monk magical?
Yeah. Well, all of the classes are magical to some degree. It is a fantasy game.
Right. But I have all of these problems with Pathfinder's monk as well. The only difference is the monk isn't necessarily magical because taking the key spells is not mandatory. You can play a monk who is just a brawler.
Yeah, I will point out this art slaps though.
That art is fucking fantastic. Yeah.
It is fucking efficient.
This is only half of the classes though. Were there any other classes you wanted to talk about?
Oh yes, sorcerer.
Sorcerer. Okay.
So if I'm anti-woke person and I want to feel special, sorcerer is great because all I had to do was be born with magic blood.
Mm.
You have magic blood that makes you magic and special. Why are you magic and special? Because you have magic blood.
Yes, sorcerers wield innate magic that is stamped into their being.
Also, one thing, if you scroll up to their chart or down to their chart, I forget where the chart is.
Say that again. Scroll what?
Could you not?
Their class feature chart.
You know, devil's advocate here. Could you not say that that's no different than, like, say, a family that has a lot of like just excellent musicians in it?
Yeah, totally.
Sure.
But we're classifying things as woke or anti-woke, and having innate things is anti-woke.
Yes.
Sure. Okay.
Could one just nitpick with this class? So it's all about having your innate magic, but you pick the class feature called your bloodline at level 3.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like
now it's just called the sorcerer subclass. In this rules update, they removed choosing the sorcerer bloodline.
Okay, so you pick your type of. Okay, all right. That is a fix then. So now to go on to the woke side, we got to go to the bard.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, the bard is the wokest class in the game.
Bard is the wokest class. You know why?
Because it's the gayest class.
Not just that. It's very. Look at this fancy person. Tell me that person is straight. Tell me to my face they're straight. You can't. But do you know what their subclass is called? Bob of the Old Ways. Bards go to college.
Oh my God.
That is the Bard College. It has to be the ultimate liberal arts institution.
And look at the first one, the College of Dance.
Dance.
Like, come on.
They're going to college for dance.
This is literally majoring in lesbian dances.
Yes. Again, look at they. And I personally I want to see a bard who just looks like a guy who's working for a living.
Yeah, here we see a bard defending their master's thesis through interpretive dance.
Right. I want to see the bard who's actually like a college kid where they have there's a term paper due tomorrow and they're super stressed out and they have drank more caffeine than you could think is imaginable.
Now here's a very
this guy kind of looks fancy, right? Even this guy is a bit of a fob.
A lot of pink going on here.
Yeah, I still dig it. If I could pull that look off, I would 100%.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't?
Anti-woke people.
All
right, gotta go to cleric now, because cleric is not just woke. Cleric is blasphemous. You know why?
Because they worship more than one god.
You choose a god. You have a god who gives you powers. And
not even necessarily that. Because look at the description. Okay, clerics draw power from the realms of the gods and harness it to work miracles, blessed by a deity, a pantheon, or another immortal entity.
Oh, so there are pantheons of gods and other immortal entities that can grant powers. This is polytheism.
Yeah.
That's blasphemy. This class is blasphemous, Bob. Do you know your game has blasphemy in it?
And yet, the cleric, along with the paladin, is one of the most medieval Christian coded classes in the entire
absolutely.
game.
They're both Crusader themed as fuck.
Yeah.
The cleric wears armor and uses weapons.
Yes, as we see up here.
Yeah. This motherfucker is not giving the sermon on Sunday and passing around the plate, right?
Right. And the way D&D presents polytheism is really weird too, because it's basically just Christianity, with medieval Christianity with the serial numbers filed off.
It's Catholicism if you called the saints gods.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but it's also the idea of, I mean, I guess this would make sense for a cleric, but the idea is there are many gods, but you devote yourself to one god.
Right. That's not how polytheism works in the real world.
Yeah. In the real world, polytheistic cultures worship all of the gods, depending on what time of year it is, or what the situation is, etc.
There are priests who tend to the temples and shrines of specific deities, but even they are also polytheistic.
Yep. And notice how the cleric, the holy person, how almost all of their class abilities are about fighting.
Yeah.
Like a good crusader would, their divine
There's no
strike.
to your flock. So now it's anti-woke again.
Yeah. Improved blessed strikes. Yeah.
But do you know what's even worse than polytheism?
What's that?
Polytheism plus environmentalism.
Uh-oh. We're talking about the druid, aren't we?
Talking about the druid. Look at this hippie motherfucker. Taking care of animals, not hunting and killing them and putting them up on the wall.
Literal
This is my favorite class.
Oh, Druid's fantastic. I love Druid.
Yeah.
Look, he's doing little light shows for the animals and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can turn into animals. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Druids are great. I love Druids.
And notice how all the animals are smiling.
Yeah, they're happy.
Except the owl, but I guess owls don't really have face muscles to smile.
But yeah,
So-
Druid is the
Owls are
wokest.
permanently pissed looking.
So, Professor Morgan, tell us what's wrong with the druid.
Well, it has all the problems of cleric with the polytheism.
Uh-huh.
And it's about protecting the environment, right? You're a guardian of nature. You protect the forces of nature from the influence of people like big industry.
Suspicious that there is industry at all. Look at this. Look at this hippie.
Look at this fucking hippie.
Oh shit.
Again, I would wear that outfit 100%. I would wear that. Get me one of those.
Well, let's look at the subclasses here, okay? The Circle of the Land. What is this person doing?
She's like a high class druid.
It's like an autumn theme. I love autumn themes on fantasy characters. I have a Wood Elf army for Warhammer Fantasy that is autumn themed. I love it. It pops so well.
Shit.
Then you have Circle of the Moon, where you turn into
Circle
animals.
of the Moon.
So you're into bestiality, I guess. See Baldur's Gate 3 in our episode on that for more details.
Right. Here's the one. The Circle of the Moon is the one that focuses on shape changing. Like all
Yeah.
druids can shape shift into animals, but this one turns it up to 11.
Yep. And we all know being fluid in your presentation, that's super woke.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that definitely makes it's confusing to people. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, I don't get it. You know, you don't have to, buddy.
You don't have to.
Just
Right.
accept
This one oddly, I think this one is furry coded
Oh,
personally,
it's
but,
absolutely. Yeah, it is the most furry druid.
but they don't turn into furries. They just turn into actual animals.
Right. Their fursuit is.
they're what furries wish they were.
My spouse in one of our Pathfinder games played a puppet, which is a little like a toy come to life. They play a stuffed dragon druid. That's a Wild Order druid, which is the Pathfinder version of Circle of the Moon. And
Yeah.
their animal forms are stuffed animals.
Oh wow, that's cool.
All right. Did we have anything else for this evening?
Well, paladins are all supposed to be good and empathetic, and we know empathy is woke.
Right.
It's a sin, in fact.
It's a sin.
So paladins are just like pure evil, right?
Pure evil. And not only that, there is a order of paladins whose oath is to take vengeance on evildoers. These are your Antifa super soldiers.
Fuck yeah.
In
Who's
Black
that?
Blood, no less. Like, his face is obscured, his clothes are all black.
Wow.
He's about to fuck up that Nazi bar.
And look at this. We even have a hippie paladin.
We do have the hippie paladin. And they don't even make you be French to be a paladin.
Outrageous. Merde.
Right.
Impossible.
I think that covers it for our coverage of D&D's wokeness for today.
Okay.
So, what do you think, folks? Woke or not woke? Vote in chat now.
Yeah. Let me. You know what? I can actually do a vote if I go over to the actual YouTube thing. I can.
Oh yeah,
do a
paladins like in olden D&D were so Crusader themed. You could only be human, and
Yeah.
only human. You couldn't be a half elf or half orc paladin. You had to be a human paladin.
Yeah. And it was like that for all of the non-human races. Like
Yeah.
in the original D&D, humans could be any character class, and they could have unlimited levels in any character class, but
Yeah.
they could only be one class at a time.
Yeah.
And all of the non-human characters had level limits, so they could never be as powerful as humans, and they had only specific classes they were allowed to use.
Right. So.
And in the
dwarves
original
could-
D&D, there was no distinction between race and class. In the original D&D, elf was a class,
Yeah.
and dwarf was a class. Yeah.
See, what's funny is like when I started to study like game design, one of the reasons I thought that like that the non-humans had the ability point bonuses is because they start stronger, because humans don't get any. Humans got fucking nothing. But then they had these caps.
Mhm.
Where humans start with no bonuses, but they have no cap. So they have a weaker starting point, but a higher potential. But then, of course, games didn't go that high level that often because that's years of commitment.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the new rules update, they've kind of maximized human abilities again, because humans have
Yep.
an ability in this version of D&D that they didn't have in the 2014 version, which is called Heroic Inspiration. So that a human, now Heroic Inspiration is a game mechanic that all character types can get access to in the game, but they have to do certain things to get it, whereas a human just gets Heroic Inspiration after every long rest. So humans have the ability every single day or every 8 hours in game time to re-roll one of their dice if they don't like the result.
Don't halflings have that too? Or something like it? Or am I thinking of
Don't who?
halflings? They
Halflings
a
have
reroll
luck.
Yeah, they have a reroll, but it's a reroll mechanic, isn't it?
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
works slightly differently because Heroic Inspiration can be applied to any die in the game, whereas luck is only the D20.
Oh, so you could heroic inspiration a damage die.
Yep.
So by the way, be sure to get your vote in right now.
Yeah,
man.
get your vote in. Vote now.
Is D&D woke now? Yes, no, always has been. Right now, always has been is winning by quite a stretch, 73% of the vote.
Yeah. By the way, we're way over time on this segment.
Yeah,
Well, Bob and I got talking on D&D. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
happen.
I wanted to let y'all have that.
I was running the screen share, so I wasn't keeping track of the time.
I
All
had
right,
my
we're
list of
gonna,
notes
we're gonna
up.
end the poll. Always has been. There we go. It's confirmed, official.
D&D has always been woke. And that means if you've played D&D anytime in the last half a century, you were woke the whole time. Sorry.
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry.